My grandmother said the road keeps accounts. Every meal you cook beside it, every traveler you warm. The road remembers. Saya believed her. She carried that belief the way she carried her grandmother's scrolls, close to the body, protected from rain. The pre-dawn forest lay under white ground mist, the road a ribbon of stones worn smooth by 200 years of sandals. Saya climbed in her deep indigo travel coat, her wicker pack strapped high, the iron pot ringing softly against the frame with each step. The sky was the precise dark blue of ink dropped in water, and a single star still hung above the cedars. Somewhere deeper in the trees, a wood thrush called and received no answer. She crested a stone-topped rise. Below her, lantern light bled through the paper screens of a waystation inn. The Kumo no Shokudo, 2 stories of dark timber and moss-patched thatch, steam lifting from a vent in the roof like a slow exhale. It was the only warm thing in a landscape of blue-gray shadow. She had walked the Nakasendo mountain roads for 9 years. 63 villages. Every innkeeper knew her pack. Every village headman kept a space for her pot near the communal hearth. She was licensed, trusted. She was, she thought, exactly what she was supposed to be. Inside the low-ceilinged common room, a dozen travelers slept on mats arranged in spokes around a banked iron hearth. The air smelled of cedar smoke, straw, and something medicinal: dried burdock, chrysanthemum, old ginger. Saya moved with practiced quiet to the fire, adding wood, hanging her pot, already working. She unpacked with the efficiency of someone who had done this 10,000 times, each herb bundle set in the same order, the water measured without measuring. Her hands knew a different arithmetic than her mind. At the far edge of the room, half concealed by a support pillar, a man in charcoal gray travel clothes sat with his back to the wall and his eyes open. He had not been sleeping. He watched her hands. His name was Kaido, 31, and his stillness was not rest but the stillness of something coiled. His ledger lay closed on his knee. He had written nothing in it for an hour. The woman matched the licensure record, he noted to himself. 28 years, single traveling permit renewed annually without incident. Specialty designation medicinal culinary practitioner. No political affiliations, no family remaining to compel loyalty. Her unpacking sequence was identical to the village reports. Same left-to-right herb arrangement, same 3-count ladle test. Habit that deep was either innocence or a very good performance of it. He had learned not to assume the difference. An older merchant stirred on his mat, coughing with the wet sound of mountain chest cold. Saya turned to him before he had fully woken, already reaching for a specific bundle. Ginger and perilla with a little dried citrus peel, she told him, low and matter-of-fact. The helping as automatic as breathing. Drink it before you sit up. Your lungs will thank you before the road does. I didn't ask, the merchant began, groggy but warmed at being known by a stranger. You didn't need to, she said gently. She ladled broth into a wooden cup, set it within his reach without ceremony, and returned to the main pot as if none of it had happened. Across the room, Kaito's stylus touched the open ledger. He wrote one word, then he stopped. By full morning, the room had come alive. Travelers eating, a serving girl carrying trays, light streaming amber through the paper screens. Saya presented a bowl of bone broth to the innkeeper, a stout woman of 50 with a sharp, appraising eye, who lifted it and inhaled the way a person inhales something whose quality they already know. Same recipe? The keeper asked, satisfied. My grandmother's, Saya said with the quiet pride of one who finds meaning in consistency. I adjust the ratio when I'm at altitude. The bones need longer at this elevation. The marrow wants more time. The broth held an amber translucence, a single curl of dried mushroom just opening in the heat, a bead of oil catching the light. You heard about the Lord's procession that came through 3 nights ago? The keeper asked, and there was a shadow behind her approval, for she had noticed something Saya had not. I was 2 days east, Saya said mildly, half attending to a tasting ladle. A bad pass. Snow came early. The keeper dropped her voice into the register of gossip that is actually news. Lord Imagawa's 3rd son died on the road. They're saying his food cook poisoned him, or something in the cook's supplies was used by someone who did. Either way, the shogunate investigators are... A hand set a document on the counter between them, a hand marked with 4 parallel calluses on the palm, the hand of a man who had used a stylus for a decade and a sword for 2 decades before that. Kaito stood at Saya's shoulder. She turned, and their eyes met at close range for the first time. He was a full head taller. His face gave her nothing, and his eyes gave her slightly more than nothing, which she did not yet know how to read. Saya, he said, unhurried, with the flatness of a legal document read aloud. Medicinal culinary practitioner, mountain circuit, license number Nakasendo 204. 3 days ago at the Maruishi waystation, you prepared and served a medicinal evening broth to a group of 6 travelers, one of whom was registered under the name Fujimoto Genzo. Saya set down her ladle with care. He said he had a stomach ailment. I adjusted the recipe. Gentian and Fujimoto Genzo has since been identified as the individual who administered the compound that killed Lord Imagawa's son, Kaito said, cutting across her without raising his voice by a single degree. He died of that compound himself, 6 hours after leaving the Maruishi station. The compound was traced to a dried herb preparation consistent with your specialty designation, your grandmother's recipe. The sounds of the inn continued around them. Cups, conversation, rain beginning on the thatch, but inside the radius of those 2 people, everything had stopped. It was the exact moment the ground removes itself from beneath a person. That's not, Gentian doesn't work that way, Saya said very quietly, not performing, only trying to solve the puzzle she had been handed. None of my preparations, your license is suspended pending formal investigation, he answered in the same flat tone, though something in his jaw moved for a fraction of a second and then did not move again. You are required to accompany me to the Kizo Magistrate Station for examination. Your pack and all herb supplies are to be inventoried. He slid a second document across the counter, the suspension notice, already stamped and dated. The date was 3 days ago. He had prepared it before he arrived. He had been here before she knew. Saya looked at the document, then at her pack where her grandmother's scrolls were wrapped in oilskin against the rain. Her hand moved toward them without her permission. Don't, Kaito said. He was not cruel, which was somehow worse. Outside the inside entrance, the rain came fine and cold through thin cedar branches. Kaito walked slightly ahead and to her left, his hand not on his sword but near it. Saya carried her pack. She had been allowed it, but she walked now with the posture of someone reduced by a single document to a different kind of person. 9 years, she thought. 63 villages. She had fed this man something that very morning, she realized. The chest-cold merchant's leftover broth poured off from the main pot. He had been sitting at the edge of that fire. She had not thought to ask whether he was hungry. He had not asked. She had simply poured. She did not know yet that he had eaten it, or that he had set his cup down and written nothing for a full minute after, staring at the fire like a man trying to remember how fire works. She knew only that her license was in his pocket, her grandmother's name was in his document, and the road that had always known her had decided, this morning, to pretend they had never met. By late morning, the road narrowed to a pass between 2 stands of ancient cedar, fog sitting thick between the trunks so that the world ended 20 feet in every direction. Kaito stopped and held up one hand, the gesture of a man who hears things others don't. From somewhere in the fog came footsteps, not 1 set, 3, perhaps 4, moving fast and not toward the road. Move to the tree line, he said, low and immediate, the coldness gone sharp. Now. You just suspended my license, Saya said, her instinct resisting the new instinct to obey. Now those aren't shogunate men. He said it the way you say something you verified before opening your mouth. She moved. They reached the trees as 4 figures crossed the road at a run, black traveling clothes, no insignia, the second man carrying something wrapped in oilskin with the care of someone bearing what cannot be replaced. They passed, and the fog swallowed them. Saya and Kaito stood close against a cedar trunk, closer than they had been, close enough that she could hear him breathing, and that he was breathing at all was somehow information. Who were they? She whispered, and what she felt was something more complicated than fear. There was a beat too long before he answered. A problem for a different road. He stepped back to the path, the efficient 3 feet of distance reestablished, and gestured ahead. Saya looked at the place where those men had crossed, then at his back, then followed. He hadn't drawn his sword, she thought. He could have. She catalogued it the way she catalogued a new ingredient. Don't know yet what it's for, but keep it. It will matter later. By dusk, they reached Komanba, a smaller way station at a mountain crossroads. 3 buildings, a well, a lean-to for horses, the evening light the color of persimmon skin. At the well sat a woman in a merchant servant disguise. Plain brown clothing, 1 social class below what she could afford, hair pinned practically, a ledger open in her lap. She wrote quickly, her eyes moving between the page and the road with the alertness of someone professional about their alertness. Her name was 33, though she looked 28 in good light and 40 in bad. She saw the travelers before they saw her, watching with the evaluating attention of a woman who had spent 15 years deciding in under 3 seconds whether a stranger was an opportunity or a threat. She made her decision and closed her ledger. "Waystation kitchen's closed. Owner has a fever," she called, cheerful in the way of someone whose cheerfulness is a tool, perfectly pitched and slightly too warm. "Lucky for anyone hungry, I have enough rice and dried plum to share. And a fire that's going anyway." Saya stopped walking. Something in her face changed. The first thing that had opened there since morning. Not relief yet, the scent of possibility. "We don't require," Kaido began, in the flattest version of his flat voice, his assessment of the woman not yet finished. "Yes," Saya said quietly, firmly, overriding him for the first time without appearing to notice she had done it. "We do." And already her hands were moving toward her pack, already preparing to cook, the body making the decision the mind had not yet finished.